Hey everyone. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, I'm kicking off an exciting new series, What if Itachi Uchiha existed in the My Hero Academia world? This is my unique take on the story, blending two worlds I absolutely love. So, grab a seat, immerse yourself in the journey, and let's dive into the world where heroes, quirks, and Itachi's legendary presence collide. I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed creating it. The next day was Sunday, and Itachi found himself at the dojo, deep in training as always. His movements were fluid, calculated, and far beyond the level expected of someone his age. Dressed in a simple black gi, his Sharingan activated, spinning with 3 tomo, he sparred with his trainer, who was a seasoned martial artist but still struggled to keep up with the young prodigy. The trainer, visibly impressed yet challenged, moved in with a fast punch aimed at Itachi's chest. Itachi, without hesitation, dodged the strike effortlessly, weaving around his opponent's attacks as though he could predict every movement because he could. His Sharingan gave him an edge no one else in the dojo had. As the fight progressed, the trainer's mind raced. This kid, he joined the dojo when he was just 5. Now look at him, only 8, and he's not just my equal, he's better. He can fight in every form, even with swords and daggers. This level of skill is insane. The trainer barely had time to process another thought as Itachi performed a swift leg sweep, forcing him to jump to avoid it. But Itachi was faster. In the blink of an eye, he leaped upward and delivered a sharp kick to the trainer's torso, sending him stumbling backward with a gasp of surprise. The other students watching around the mat were left speechless, their eyes wide with awe and, for some, jealousy. The trainer fell back, catching himself with his hands, but Itachi had already landed gracefully, his eyes still glowing red with his Sharingan. The dojo was silent, every eye on Itachi as he extended a hand to his trainer. The trainer, breathing heavily, stood up and wiped sweat from his brow, but there was no resentment in his expression, only pride. He took Itachi's hand, standing up fully. "You're truly something else, Itachi," he said, his voice filled with genuine admiration. "A prodigy, without a doubt. The best student I will ever have." The trainer placed a proud hand on Itachi's shoulder. "Mark my words, you are going to become a great hero." Itachi, ever stoic, bowed with respect. "Thank you, sensei." The trainer's sweat dropped, seeing how unflappable Itachi was, despite all the praise. Still as serious as ever. He muttered under his breath, before turning to the other students, who were whispering among themselves. "He's just a kid, and yet. Did you see that kick? How can anyone be that good at 8 years old?" Jealousy and murmurs of awe filled the air as the students muttered amongst themselves, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. Some of them had been training longer than Itachi, but none had reached even a fraction of his skill level. The trainer raised a hand, silencing the room. "Remember, everyone," he said, his tone firm. "Itachi has earned every bit of this through hard work and discipline. Let his progress inspire you to do better, not tear you down." Itachi, as usual, paid little mind to the whispers. He turned away from the crowd and resumed his stance, ready for whatever came next. Itachi's trainer watched him carefully as their session came to an end. "Well, Itachi," the trainer said with a hint of pride in his voice, "there's not much more I can teach you." Itachi, as respectful as ever, bowed deeply. "Thank you for teaching me everything, sensei." The trainer smiled warmly, seeing the seriousness in Itachi's demeanor, as always. "You don't have to be so serious all the time, Itachi. I get that discipline is important in a fight, but, try to enjoy yourself too." Itachi gave a rare, small smile in return. "I'll keep that in mind, sensei." "Thank you." The trainer nodded, pleased. "You've got a great future ahead of you, kid. Don't forget that." With that, Itachi picked up his bag and bowed one last time. "Thank you for everything, sensei," he said again before turning to leave. As he walked to the car waiting for him outside, Itachi glanced out the window with a faint sense of satisfaction. Now that his dojo training was complete, he could spend more time with his sister, Momo, and that thought filled him with warmth. The road ahead seemed clear, and he was eager to get home. Once he arrived, he spotted Erika waiting for him at the entrance, dressed in her usual maid attire, a welcoming smile on her face. "Welcome back, Itachi." "Hello, Erika," he replied calmly, returning her smile with a slight nod as he stepped inside. "So, today was your last day at the dojo, right?" Erika asked as she walked beside him. Itachi nodded. "Yeah, it was. Sensei said he's taught me everything he could." Erika smiled softly. "That's wonderful. You've worked hard. Where's Momo?" Itachi asked. "She's with your mother," Erika replied, still smiling as she gestured toward the hallway. After freshening up in his room, Itachi made his way to his mother's room. As he stepped inside, he saw his mother, Yana, sitting on the bed with baby Momo in her arms, a bright smile lighting up her face. Momo, noticing Itachi's presence, giggled and kicked her tiny feet in delight. Yana looked up at him, her expression softening even more. "You're back, dear." Itachi nodded, smiling gently as he approached them. "Yes, I'm back." Yana looked at her son's lean, strong figure, and she couldn't hide her pride. "Look at you, you've become so strong, Itachi." Itachi smiled modestly, moving closer to Momo, who continued to giggle as she saw her big brother. "She's so happy." Yana chuckled, her eyes filled with warmth. "Of course she is. Her big brother is here now." Itachi leaned in, letting Momo's tiny fingers reach for him as she gurgled in joy. He smiled softly before turning his attention back to his mother. "So, Itachi," Yana began, "how's elementary school?" "It's fine," Itachi replied, his tone flat but honest. "But studies are boring, and the persistence is still there." Yana laughed softly, clearly understanding his complaint. "You mean your friend?" Itachi sighed, nodding. "Yeah. Kigo. He's persistent, annoying, but he's a nice guy." Yana smiled softly. "It's good that you've made a friend." Itachi sighed again. I suppose. After a moment, Yana teased, so, Itachi, my handsome boy. I've heard that all the girls are fond of you. Itachi immediately knew who had spilled that information. He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Erika told you, didn't she? She always spills the beans. Yana laughed gently, her eyes twinkling with amusement. Well, it was pretty obvious. My baby is very handsome. Itachi sighed again, shaking his head. It's trouble, mother. I like my personal space. But the girls keep trying to talk to me, and I politely decline. I don't understand why Kigo got so angry. Yana's sweat dropped, chuckling softly as she thought to herself, oh my. Kigo's probably just protective of you, Yana offered, amused by the situation. Itachi, however, remained stoic, already resigned to the fact that dealing with his excitable friend and the attention he received was part of his life now. He'll calm down eventually, Itachi muttered. Yana smiled, feeling grateful for this peaceful moment with her son and newborn daughter. It was rare to see Itachi at ease, and she cherished it. Itachi, she said softly, you're growing into a wonderful young man. Just remember to take a breath and enjoy these moments, too. Itachi nodded, quietly taking in her words, as little Momo continued to giggle in his arms. As Itachi sat with his mother, Momo still giggling in his arms, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, sighed, and Yana raised an eyebrow. Let me guess. Kigo. She asked with a smile. Itachi nodded and picked up the call. No sooner had he put the phone to his ear than a loud shout erupted from the speaker. Itachi. Kigo's excited voice boomed through the phone, so loud that Itachi had to pull the phone away from his ear slightly. What happened now? Itachi asked, his tone as calm as ever, though he already sensed Kigo's usual chaotic energy. Itachi, I just heard that in 4 days there's a parent-teacher meeting. Kigo shouted, sounding both anxious and hyper at the same time. Itachi sighed, slightly exasperated. So, that's the problem. Kigo groaned on the other end of the line. It's easy for you. Good grades, perfect scores, always calm and collected. But what about me? You'd be fine if you actually studied like I told you, Itachi replied evenly. Your scores are decent, but your behavior, that's another issue. Yeah, I know, Kigo grumbled. You don't have to remind me. There was a brief pause before Kigo perked up again. Anyway. I wanted to tell you that I'm going to the Cyber Games Zone later. I'm going to play some games, so, you wanna come with me? Itachi opened his mouth to decline when Kigo immediately continued, great. You're coming, then. I'll wait for you. Before Itachi could protest, Kigo hung up the phone. Itachi and Yana both sweat dropped at Kigo's sheer persistence. Yana laughed softly. I feel bad for you sometimes, Itachi. Itachi sighed, shaking his head as he pocketed his phone. He doesn't really give me a choice. After a moment, Itachi turned to his mother, remembering the other part of the conversation. By the way, mother, there's a parent-teacher meeting in 4 days. Yana nodded, already used to these updates. I'll be there, she said with a smile. Itachi nodded in return and stood up, preparing to leave for the game zone. I'll head out now. Yana smiled warmly at her son. Enjoy yourself. As Itachi moved toward the door, he hesitated for a moment and then turned back toward his mother. Mother, try to come to the meeting alone, okay? His voice was gentle but carried an undertone of concern. Yana looked at him with a sad smile. Itachi, it's been almost 4 years now. You and your father haven't spoken to each other. Itachi's expression remained stoic, though there was a flicker of something in his eyes. He should apologize first. Then I'll forgive him. It's that simple. Yana sighed softly, but she didn't press the matter further. All right, dear. Take care. Itachi gave her a small nod. Goodbye, mother, he said, and with that, he left the room, heading out to meet Kigo, his mind still lingering on his family's unresolved tension. Itachi arrived at the game zone, spotting Kigo standing outside, waiting impatiently. Kigo's eyes lit up when he saw him, a mischievous smirk already forming on his face. Itachi. Kigo called out, his voice full of energy. I knew you'd show up. And this time, I'm going to take you down. Itachi sighed softly, his expression calm as usual. I didn't come to compete with you, Kigo. Kigo grinned, undeterred by Itachi's response. That's what you said last time, but you still wiped the floor with me in the game. You beat me with a huge margin. Itachi's lips twitched into a small grin. You're not good at that game. That's not my fault. Kigo narrowed his eyes, still smirking. Today's a different day. This time, I'm gonna win. Just watch. Itachi raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced. The sun never rises from the west, Kigo. We'll see about that, Kigo said with a determined look as they walked into the game zone. They chose a 1v1 VR MMO game and geared up, stepping into the virtual world. The match began, and Itachi, with his usual calm precision, swiftly outmaneuvered Kigo. Despite Kigo's spirited attempts, Itachi easily defeated him once again. Kigo groaned, slumping back in his chair. How are you so good at this? Itachi removed his VR headset, his expression still relaxed. Because I know how to fight. Kigo shook his head in disbelief, but then a new glint appeared in his eyes. Alright, let's fight with swords this time. A real duel. Itachi glanced at him, then nodded. Okay. They geared up again for the sword duel. This time, the match was far more intense. Kigo fought fiercely, pushing himself harder than before. His attacks were fast and aggressive, and for a moment, Itachi felt a slight thrill in the challenge. But even as the battle grew closer, Itachi still managed to beat him, though this time he only had 25% health left. Kigo slumped in his seat again, panting. I was so close. I almost had you. Itachi gave a small nod. You've improved. You're good with swords. Kigo's face lit up with a smile at the compliment. Yeah, but not as good as you. If you keep practicing, you'll get there, Itachi replied calmly. Kigo smiled wider, looking genuinely grateful. Thanks, Itachi. That means a lot coming from you. As they left the game zone, Kigo glanced over at Itachi with a gleam in his eye. So, are you going to join UA? Itachi nodded. Yes. Kigo's face broke into a wide grin. I'm going to be a hero, just like you. Itachi looked at him, his usual stoic expression softening slightly. You'll make a good hero. Kigo beamed, then his playful side kicked in. And when I do, I'll get all the ladies. He said with a wink, trying to tease Itachi. Itachi's sweat dropped, shaking his head. Sure, Kigo. Kigo laughed, slapping him on the back as they continued down the street. Despite the banter, Itachi couldn't help but appreciate Kigo's unshakable spirit. Itachi returned to the mansion after his time at the game zone, and as soon as he reached the backyard, he began training again. His Sharingan activated, swirling with its 3 tomo, and he skillfully performed his kunao trick. Each kunao hit multiple targets in succession, with pinpoint accuracy. Erika watched him from a distance, a proud smile on her face. You did great, Itachi, she complimented, her voice filled with genuine admiration. Itachi simply nodded, his expression calm as always. But an idea sparked in his mind, something he wanted to test. Without saying another word, he turned and headed inside, making his way to his mother's room. Reaching the door, he knocked softly. Come in, Yana's gentle voice called from inside. Itachi opened the door and stepped into the room, finding his mother sitting with Momo, who was happily giggling in her arms. Yana smiled at him, her usual warmth showing through. What is it, dear? Itachi hesitated for a moment before speaking. Mother, I need your help. Yana raised an eyebrow, curious. Of course, name it, she replied, smiling warmly at him. I want you to make a gun for me, Itachi said plainly. Yana's smile vanished, replaced by a look of shock. What? A gun? She nearly shouted, her voice rising in disbelief. What could you possibly need a gun for, Itachi? Yes, a gun, Itachi repeated, his tone steady. Yana's eyes widened in a mix of confusion and concern. What will you do with a gun? Why would you need something so dangerous? Itachi sighed, realizing his mother had misunderstood. I want you to fire it at me. Her expression immediately shifted to one of anger. No, she exclaimed, standing up from her seat with Momo still in her arms. I will not do that, Itachi. What kind of request is that? Seeing her reaction, Itachi quickly tried to explain. No, mother. Not what you're thinking. Yana stared at him, still angry, but now confused. Then what is it, Itachi? Do you think this is a joke? Do you understand how dangerous guns are? What if the bullet hits you? You could be seriously hurt, or worse. Mother, please hear me out, Itachi pleaded. His voice remained calm but respectful. I don't mean a real bullet. I want you to fire a gun with dummy bullets. Yana blinked, her anger softening slightly as she tried to understand. Dummy bullets. Itachi nodded. Yes. I've been testing my reflexes and using everything I can, baseball throwing machines, anything that simulates speed. But everything is too slow. My Sharingan lets me see things so clearly, and I need something faster. Something that could push me. Yana's face softened, but her concern was still evident. But, a gun, Itachi. Even with dummy bullets, it's dangerous. I'll be fine, mother. I wouldn't ask this if I wasn't sure, Itachi assured her, his tone firm but gentle. I need to push my limits. Yana looked into her son's eyes, seeing the determination there, but also the care. He wasn't asking recklessly. He was calculated and calm, like always. She let out a deep sigh, holding Momo close as she considered his request. Let me think about it, Itachi, Yana finally said, her voice more composed. I understand what you're trying to do, but I'm still your mother. I don't want to put you at risk. Itachi nodded in understanding. Thank you, mother. That's all I ask. With that, he bowed respectfully and left the room, leaving Yana deep in thought. She glanced down at Momo, who giggled up at her, blissfully unaware of the conversation that had just taken place. Yana, still processing the weight of Itachi's request, placed Momo gently in her cradle. She couldn't help but worry, but deep down, she understood her son's determination. Using her quirk, she crafted a Glock 34 and some rubber bullets, perfect for simulating real gunfire but without the fatal danger. She walked outside, where Itachi and Erika were standing in the backyard, training as usual. The sight of her son, so young yet already so disciplined and focused, made her heart swell with both pride and concern. Taking a deep breath, she called out, Itachi. Itachi turned at the sound of his mother's voice and saw her approaching, holding the gun and a box of rubber bullets. A small smile appeared on his usually stoic face. Thank you, mother, he said calmly. Yana, still unsure about what they were about to do, glanced at Erika. Erika, go inside and watch over Momo. She's alone right now. Erika nodded, sensing the seriousness in Yana's tone. Without argument, she headed inside, leaving just Yana and Itachi in the backyard. Yana walked toward the center of the yard, her grip on the gun firm but hesitant. Itachi, this isn't a good idea, she said, her voice laced with worry. Even with rubber bullets, this could be dangerous. Itachi met his mother's gaze, his Sharingan activated, red eyes spinning with purpose. Don't worry, mother. That's why I asked for the rubber bullets. I need to push myself to become faster. To react quicker. Yana looked at him for a moment, seeing not just her son but the warrior he was becoming. She let out a small sigh, still conflicted, but she nodded. All right, Itachi. But I'm not comfortable with this. Itachi stood in the middle of the backyard, taking a deep breath. I'll be fine. Just shoot every round, non-stop. Yana swallowed hard, her heart pounding in her chest. She raised the gun, her hands trembling slightly. Her motherly instinct screamed against what she was about to do, but she knew Itachi wouldn't have asked if he didn't believe in his abilities. Are you ready? Yana asked, her voice a little shaky. Itachi's Sharingan spun, focusing intently on her movements. He gave a firm nod. Yes. I'm ready. Yana hesitated for just a second longer before squeezing the trigger. The first shot rang out, the rubber bullet speeding toward Itachi. But before Yana could even register it, Itachi had already dodged, his movements swift and precise. She fired again. And again. Rapidly, in succession, just as Itachi had asked. Her eyes widened in astonishment as she watched her son dodge every single bullet, moving fluidly as if he could see each one coming a split second before it was fired. Itachi's Sharingan was fully engaged, every motion of Yana's hands, every trigger pull, and every bullet's path was visible to him in slow motion. He moved with an almost supernatural grace, weaving and dodging each shot as if it were second nature. Yana's astonishment grew with every round. She had known Itachi was special, but seeing him like this, his agility, his precision, it was breathtaking. The gun clicked, signaling the final round had been fired. Itachi stood there, completely unscathed, his breathing steady and calm. Yana lowered the gun, her hand still trembling slightly, her heart racing in disbelief. You dodged every single one, she whispered, her voice filled with awe. Itachi deactivated his Sharingan, his usual calm demeanor returning. He walked over to his mother, bowing slightly in gratitude. Thank you, mother. This was exactly what I needed. Yana looked at him, still trying to process what she had just witnessed. She felt a surge of pride, but also a deep sense of realization. Her son wasn't just a child anymore. He was growing into something extraordinary, something she could barely comprehend. Itachi nodded, thinking to himself, that was too easy. Any shinobi I've faced has matched this speed. But his focus shifted back to his mother. I'm sorry for making you worry, mother. Yana's expression softened, but there was a hint of frustration in her voice. Don't do something like that again, Itachi. He smiled lightly. I promise, I won't. Without warning, Yana playfully pinched his cheeks. You'll still get a punishment for scaring me like that. Itachi blinked in surprise, then nodded with a small smile. Yes, I deserve it. Yana's gaze softened as she cupped his face in her hands. For your punishment, you won't see Momo for 5 days. Itachi's eyes widened in disbelief, his heart sinking. He didn't say anything, but the sadness in his expression was unmistakable. Seeing the sorrow on his face, Yana couldn't help but smile gently. Okay, she said, relenting. I've changed my mind. Just 2 days. Itachi's face relaxed, though the sadness still lingered. Thank you, mother, he whispered, his tone full of sincerity. Yana pulled him into a warm hug, resting her chin on his shoulder. Oh, my heart, she murmured, her love for him evident in her voice. With a small smile, Itachi replied, this won't happen again. Yana, still holding him close, whispered, it better not. Keep that in mind. Just then, Erika entered the backyard, carrying Momo in her arms. I heard firing, she said, her eyes scanning the scene. Yana and Itachi exchanged glances before Yana calmly replied, yes, it was just part of his training. Erika's eyes widened in shock when she noticed the gun in Yana's hand. Lady Yana. She began, concerned. Yana waved it off with a reassuring smile. Don't worry, Erika. Everything's fine. Still a bit uncertain, Erika shifted her attention to Momo, who was playing with strands of her blonde hair. She smiled at the little girl's playful gestures. It looks like she likes your hair, Yana remarked, her voice soft and full of affection. Erika beamed down at Momo, her smile full of warmth. Itachi watched them, a gentle smile forming on his own face. In that moment, a thought crossed his mind, this place, it's not so bad after all. As the day for the parent-teacher meeting arrived, Yana and Itachi made their way through the school grounds toward his classroom. Children were scattered around with their parents, laughing, chatting, and playing. Yana glanced at the bustling scene and then at her son. I already know what they're going to say about you, Yana said with a teasing smile. Itachi sighed, clearly bored. I know. It's always the same thing, and it's boring to hear it all the time. Yana chuckled softly and patted his shoulder. For me, every time I hear something good about you, even if it's the same thing, it makes me proud. Repetition doesn't make it any less special. Itachi glanced at his mother, a small smile breaking through his stoic expression. Sure, if you say so. As they arrived at the classroom, Itachi immediately spotted Kigo and his mother sitting in front of their homeroom teacher. Kigo's usual cheerful demeanor was replaced with a shrug, while his mother looked exasperated. The teacher was clearly discussing Kigo's behavior, likely another reprimand. Itachi sighed and muttered under his breath, I knew that was going to happen. Yana gave a knowing look before guiding Itachi forward. Let's go sit down. It'll be our turn next, she said. Itachi nodded, following his mother to the waiting area. Once Kigo's meeting was over, he turned around and spotted Itachi. His face lit up with a grin. Hey, Itachi. He called out. Itachi gave a small nod, lifting a hand in a brief wave. Kigo's mother smiled as well, noticing the interaction. So, you're Itachi, she said warmly, her eyes studying him with curiosity. Kigo's mother gently pushed her son forward. Let's give them their turn. We'll talk later, Kigo, she said. Kigo nodded enthusiastically. We're waiting outside, he added. Itachi and Yana nodded back, watching them leave. Kigo's mother glanced at them one more time as they exited and thought to herself, they're like carbon copies of each other. She bowed politely before leaving, and Yana and Itachi returned the gesture. They took their seats in front of the homeroom teacher, who greeted them with a warm smile. Hello, I'm Hana Suzuki, she introduced herself. Yana smiled back, introducing herself as well. Yana Yaoyorozu. Thank you for your time. Suzuki smiled warmly. I know of your family, of course. The Yaoyorozu name is well known. Then she turned her attention to Itachi, her smile widening. Itachi has been excelling in class. His intelligence and academic performance are outstanding, as are his athletic abilities. Yana listened to the teacher's praise, her heart swelling with pride. Every compliment, though expected, made her beam. Suzuki continued, if he keeps this up, the school will likely award him a gold medal for academics by the end of the year. He's already earned 2. Yana turned to look at Itachi with a proud smile, but then Suzuki hesitated, adding, however, I do have one small concern. Yana's smile faltered, surprised. A concern? What is it? She asked, her curiosity piqued. No one had ever mentioned a problem with Itachi before. Suzuki nodded, choosing her words carefully. It's not academic, but more social. Itachi excels in everything he does, but he lacks communication with the other students. It's good that he's formed a bond with Kigo. Kigo talks a lot, which balances out Itachi's quiet nature, but still, Itachi tends to keep to himself. Yana listened intently, her expression softening. The teacher continued, I know school is about discipline and academics, but it's also about learning to build relationships. Itachi could benefit from talking more with his classmates and forming friendships. That's just as important as his grades. Yana nodded thoughtfully, turning to her son. She understood the teacher's concern. Thank you, Miss Suzuki, she said with a soft smile. Then, looking at Itachi, she added, what do you think about that, dear? Itachi, still composed, gave a small nod. I'll try, he said simply, his words holding a quiet resolve. Yana placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, grateful for his willingness to listen, even if it wasn't his strong suit. Itachi gave a respectful bow to his homeroom teacher, saying, thank you, sensei. Yana also offered a polite bow, smiling. Thank you for your time. Hana Suzuki, their homeroom teacher, smiled warmly in return. Thank you for coming. And Itachi, remember what I said, communication is just as important as your studies. Itachi nodded, acknowledging her advice, and with that, he and Yana left the classroom. As they walked down the hallway, they spotted Kigo and his mother sitting on a bench outside. Kigo noticed them first, his face lighting up. Mother, look. Itachi's here. He said excitedly. Tomi Takamai, Kigo's mother, stood up and smiled as they approached. Hello, Miss Yaoyorozu, she greeted with a warm smile. My name is Tomi Takamai. It's a pleasure to meet you. Yana smiled in return. I'm Yana Yaoyorozu. Please, call me Yana. Kigo is Itachi's friend, so you're also my friend, she said kindly. Tomi chuckled and nodded. Yes, of course. Because of your son, my Kigo has matured a bit. He talks about Itachi all the time. Yana glanced at Kigo and smiled, noticing his cheerful energy. Your son is adorable and handsome, she said, genuinely complimenting him. Kigo muttered shyly, yeah. While shifting slightly on his feet. Itachi let out a small sigh but remained composed. Tomi smiled and then added, your son is also very handsome, Yana. He looks just like you. Itachi bowed slightly. Thank you, Takamai-san, he said with his usual calm politeness. Tomi laughed lightly. So well-mannered too, unlike my son, she teased, causing Kigo to frown in mock offense. Mother. Kigo muttered, but Tomi laughed again, clearly fond of her son's antics. Yana smiled at the friendly interaction. You're both going to be heroes, aren't you? She said, looking between the two boys. Kigo's face lit up, and with a smirk, he proudly announced, yeah. Not only me. He tugged Itachi's arm, pulling him closer. We're going to be heroes together. Itachi looked at him and nodded, a small but meaningful smile playing on his lips. Yeah. Both mothers smiled at their son's determination. We'll be cheering for you both, Yana said, her voice full of encouragement. Tomi nodded in agreement. Absolutely. As the conversation wrapped up, Tomi glanced at the time. Well, we should be heading out. It was lovely meeting you, Yana. Take care, Itachi. Yana and Itachi nodded in return. Thank you, Tomi. Take care as well, Yana replied. Kigo grinned at Itachi and waved enthusiastically. Bye, Itachi. See you tomorrow. Itachi gave a brief nod, lifting his hand in a small wave. Yeah, see you tomorrow. With that, the Takamis left, and Yana and Itachi made their way to the car. Once inside, Yana started the engine, glancing at Itachi out of the corner of her eye. So, she began, what do you think about what your teacher said? About being more social. Itachi looked out the window, thinking for a moment before responding in his usual calm tone. I understand why she said it. I'll try to talk more. But it's not really my thing. Yana smiled softly, her eyes filled with motherly pride. I know. It's okay, though. Just try in your own way. You'll figure it out. Itachi nodded, appreciating her understanding. I will, he replied quietly, his eyes focused ahead as they drove home together, the day's events still fresh in his mind. They arrived home a short while later, pulling into the driveway of their large family estate. As they stepped out of the car, the evening air was cool and refreshing. Yana glanced up at the sky, watching as the stars began to appear. Inside, the house was quiet, but the warmth of home enveloped them. Erika was in the living room, playing with Momo, who was giggling as she tried to crawl across the floor toward her. Momo's soft laughter echoed through the room, filling it with a sense of peace. Yana smiled at the sight and turned to Itachi. You should spend some time with Momo. She's missed you all day. Itachi nodded, setting his bag down and walking over to his baby sister. As soon as Momo saw him, her tiny hands reached out toward him, her bright eyes filled with joy. Itachi knelt down beside her, letting her crawl onto his lap. Her innocent giggles filled the air, and he couldn't help but smile, a rare moment of tenderness softening his usual stoic demeanor. Erika watched them, a small smile on her face as she observed. She really adores you, Itachi, she said, her voice quiet but affectionate. Itachi glanced at Erika and nodded. I know, he said softly, stroking Momo's hair gently. She's special. Erika's smile widened. We all think so. Yana entered the room, carrying a tray with tea for herself and Erika. She set it down on the table and sat next to them, watching her children with warmth in her eyes. You're both special to me, she said, her voice filled with love. Our family is everything. As the evening wore on, the atmosphere in the house was peaceful. Itachi continued to play with Momo, letting her tug at his fingers and giggle as she babbled nonsense words. Yana and Erika chatted quietly, the light from the lamps casting a soft glow around them. Eventually, Momo grew tired, her eyes drooping as she nestled into Itachi's chest. He gently rocked her back and forth until she fell asleep, her tiny breaths even and peaceful. He carefully stood up and carried her to her crib, tucking her in with a tenderness that only those close to him ever saw. When he returned to the living room, Yana was waiting for him, her expression soft. You're a good brother, Itachi. He gave a small nod, acknowledging her words but saying nothing. He didn't need to. The bond between them, the love in their family, was unspoken but strong. Itachi sat under the dim light, his Sharingan activated as he pondered the nature of his new quirk, still adapting to it in this new world. With my 3-tomo Sharingan, I can use illusions, but who should I test them on? He mused. As he looked up, he noticed Erika standing nearby, her head tilted with a curious expression. What's going on, Itachi? Erika asked, sensing his focus on something serious. Itachi turned toward her, his tone calm as always. If you don't mind, could you be my test subject? Erika's eyes widened slightly before she covered herself playfully, teasing him. What are you saying, Itachi? Asking a girl to be your test subject. She said with an exaggerated pout. Itachi immediately sweat dropped, waving his hands in slight panic. You know I didn't mean it that way. He muttered, caught off guard by her teasing. Erika laughed, enjoying seeing the normally composed Itachi flustered. I know. But what can I do to help? I don't even have a quirk, she said with a mock-sad face, but there was a glint of humor in her eyes. You don't need to do anything, Itachi replied, regaining his composure. Just look into my eyes, and I'll cast an illusion. An illusion? Erika asked, intrigued. Your quirk can do that too. Itachi, not wanting to explain the truth about his Sharingan just yet, quickly came up with a cover story. I accidentally used it on Kigo earlier. So, I thought I should train to control it better. Erika raised an eyebrow, studying his face before sighing. Alright, Itachi. I'll trust you, but this better not be scary. Itachi nodded, activating his Sharingan. The red tomo spun slowly as Erika gazed into his eyes. Suddenly, her vision was engulfed in darkness, and two large, ominous Sharingan eyes floated before her, staring into her soul. A sense of dread washed over her, and her body froze as fear gripped her heart. In a split second, Itachi deactivated his Sharingan, and the illusion dissipated. Erika gasped, stumbling back slightly, her breath unsteady. I'm sorry, Erika, Itachi said softly, his eyes filled with genuine regret as he stepped closer to her. I didn't mean to scare you. He thought to himself, I've shown far worse illusions in the past, but even something mild was enough to frighten her. He frowned, knowing he should have anticipated that. Erika looked up at him, taking in his apologetic expression, and managed a soft laugh. It's okay, Itachi. It was scary, I won't lie, she admitted, running a hand through her hair. But it's nothing I can't handle. Itachi still seemed troubled, shaking his head. I should have known better. It was a bad idea. Erika smirked, reaching over to poke his forehead lightly. Don't worry, Itachi. Maybe I just need to watch more horror movies to build up my tolerance. Itachi blinked, momentarily taken aback by her lightheartedness, then smiled softly. Yeah, maybe. Erika grinned, stepping closer. So, what, you're gonna use your scary eyes to prank me next time? Is that the plan? Itachi's eyes widened in slight surprise. No, of course not, he began, but before he could finish, Erika burst out laughing, clearly amused by his reaction. For someone so serious, you're really fun to tease, you know that? She said with a wide smile. Before he could respond, Erika did something unexpected. She wrapped her arms around him, pulling him into a warm, affectionate hug. Itachi stood there for a moment, surprised by the gesture, but slowly returned the hug, feeling the warmth of her embrace. Don't overthink it, Itachi, Erika whispered softly. It's fine. And don't do anything stupid like blaming yourself. Itachi let out a soft sigh, slightly relieved. Why would I? She pulled away from the hug, looking him in the eyes with a playful smile. Good. Now, you should probably go get some rest. You've had enough training for one night. Itachi gave a slight nod, but just before he could leave, Erika teased him one more time. But seriously, if you ever decide to use your quirk on me again, make it something cute next time, okay? Itachi blinked, caught off guard yet again, before a rare, genuine smile crossed his face. I'll keep that in mind. Erika winked at him, turning to leave. Good night, Itachi. Good night, Erika, he replied, watching her go with a quiet sense of appreciation for her light-hearted nature. Time skipped to 4 years later. It was a quiet Sunday morning, and Itachi, now sporting jet black hair pulled back in a low ponytail, was doing push-ups. He, having opened up more over the past few months, was no longer as stoic as he once was. His toned arms flexed with every movement, sweat dripping from his brow as he maintained a steady pace. Erika, sitting on top of him, was counting each rep with a playful smirk. 82, 83, 84, she counted, casually enjoying her perch on his back. As Itachi pushed up again, his breathing steady but labored, he quirked an eyebrow and teased, "Erika, have you been eating more lately?" Erika immediately shot him a glare, her cheeks puffing slightly in annoyance. "Let me remind you, my weight is exactly the same as last time," she snapped. Itachi chuckled, continuing his reps effortlessly. "Feels like you've gained some weight. My arms are going numb." "Liar." Erika retorted, crossing her arms indignantly. Still amused, Itachi pushed himself through more reps. "Relax, I'm just messing with you." Erika pouted but couldn't help a smile from creeping onto her face. "Well, today's Momo's quirk test, right?" she asked, shifting the conversation. Itachi nodded, his tone becoming more serious. "Yeah, sometimes it worries me. I hope her quirk manifests well." Erika looked at him, her teasing demeanor fading into something more empathetic. "I know you're anxious, but I have a feeling she'll get an amazing quirk, Itachi. She's strong, just like you." He finished his final push-up and stood, wiping the sweat from his face with a towel. "Yeah, she will." Erika stood up as well, brushing her clothes off. "You should get cleaned up before we head out." Itachi nodded, draping the towel over his shoulder. "Will you be coming with us for the quirk checkup?" There was a moment of hesitation before Erika replied, her eyes shifting slightly. No, I have something to do today." Itachi, sharp as ever, narrowed his eyes. "Something to do? If it's work around the mansion, the other maids can handle it." Erika quickly stammered, trying to cover her tracks. No. I'm meeting someone." "Who?" Itachi asked, his gaze steady. She hesitated again before blurting out, "A friend." Itachi raised an eyebrow. "A friend, huh? Who's this friend?" Feeling cornered, Erika crossed her arms defensively and shot back, "Are you my mom or something?" Itachi sighed, knowing she was avoiding the question. "Fine, I won't ask anymore," he said, heading towards the bathroom. But just before entering, he glanced back at her with a smirk. "But Erika, work on your lying skills." Erika's eyes widened in surprise, her face heating up as she realized he had seen right through her. "He saw through me." She muttered to herself, sighing in relief that he didn't push further. After a quick shower, Itachi returned to his room and found a neatly folded set of clothes on the bed, a black hoodie and matching track pants. He smiled faintly to himself, knowing Erika had laid them out for him. Dressed and ready, he caught a glimpse of himself in the mirror. Not bad, he mused before heading downstairs. As he descended, he noticed Erika slipping out the door in her maid's uniform, carrying a small bag. She was gone before he could call out to her. His mother, Yana, was seated in the living room, wearing a beautiful green dress adorned with delicate jewelry. "Mother," Itachi greeted, "where's Momo?" Yana looked up from her book and smiled warmly. "Oh my, Itachi, you look good. That hoodie suits you," she remarked. Itachi offered a small smile in return. "Thank you." "So, where is she?" "She's with your father, playing," Yana replied. "Takashi's been entertaining her all morning." Itachi nodded approvingly. "That's good. He's great with her." Before Yana could respond, a high-pitched voice interrupted them. "Brother." Momo came running into the room, her excitement palpable. Itachi dropped to one knee and caught her in a hug, smiling as she clung to him. "Today's the quirk test." Momo beamed, her eyes bright with anticipation. Itachi smiled gently, brushing a hand through her hair. "That's right. My little sister is going to get a strong quirk." Her face lit up even more. "I'll get a quirk just like my big brother." Itachi's smile faltered slightly at her words, and he glanced over at Takashi, who was watching them from across the room with a stern expression. Itachi quickly refocused on Momo, placing his hand gently on her head. "No, Momo. You'll get a quirk even more powerful than mine." "Really?" Momo asked, eyes wide with wonder. "Yes," Itachi replied softly. "You know why?" "Why?" she asked eagerly. "Because our father has a strong quirk," Itachi teased, a playful glint in his eyes. "Like All Might. He could wipe out everyone with one punch." Yana, unable to suppress her laughter, covered her mouth while Takashi's expression tightened. Momo, stars in her eyes, turned to their father with awe. "Really, father?" she asked, pure admiration in her voice. Takashi struggled to keep his composure, his annoyance barely hidden. "Yes, Momo. But we should get going, or we'll be late for the appointment," he said, his voice strained. Momo nodded happily, and Itachi lifted her into his arms. As they prepared to leave, Yana walked beside them, glancing at Itachi thoughtfully. "You've changed a lot, Itachi," Yana remarked, her voice soft but full of warmth. Itachi smiled softly. "Yeah, I guess I have." Then, after a brief pause, he asked, "Mother, do you know where Erika went?" Yana shook her head. "She mentioned meeting someone, but didn't say much more." Itachi sighed. "She told me the same thing, and I know it's a lie." Yana chuckled softly at Itachi's comment. "How can you be so sure?" Itachi, with a faint smirk, replied, "Because she's not exactly the best at lying, mother." Yana gave a soft laugh, amused by the gentle banter. Momo, excited as ever, chimed in, "I know where she went." Itachi glanced at his sister, raising an eyebrow. "Oh? And where's that?" Momo grinned mischievously. "I think she's planning to surprise us at the hospital." Itachi's sweat dropped, amused by her innocence. "Yeah, that sounds about right." Before they could continue, Takashi's voice boomed from the front of the house. "What's taking you all so long?" Yana, ever patient, said, "Let's go, Itachi." He nodded, and they all headed out to the car. As they settled in, Takashi sat in the passenger seat up front, while Yana, Itachi, and Momo sat in the back. Itachi leaned back in his seat, watching his father through the rearview mirror, his gaze sharp and contemplative. He turned slightly to Yana, speaking low enough for Momo not to hear. Why is he even here? Now he's going to start judging Momo too. Yana gave Itachi a warning look but didn't say anything. Before she could respond, Takashi, as if sensing the tension, spoke up. Because I believe Momo won't turn out to be a failure like you. The air in the car grew thick with silence. Yana's eyes flashed with frustration as she turned to Takashi. Do you really think this is the right time for that, Takashi? Itachi's expression didn't change, but there was a noticeable tightness in his voice. And what if she doesn't inherit your quirk, or mother's? What then? Takashi remained silent for a moment before muttering, nothing. Exactly what I thought, Itachi said softly, glancing down at Momo, who was now watching the exchange with a confused expression. Itachi quickly gave her a reassuring smile and patted her head gently. Don't worry about it, Momo. Momo's wide eyes softened as she returned his smile, trusting her brother completely. Yana's eyes darted between her son and husband, the tension in the car unmistakable. Out of nowhere, Takashi scoffed. She'll inherit something greater. Something far more impressive than anything you ever had. Itachi sighed, barely able to hide his growing irritation. Right, because your quirk is so extraordinary, he muttered under his breath. Takashi's eyes flared with anger, and he was about to retort when Yana stepped in, her voice calm but firm. Itachi, apologize to your father. Itachi looked at his mother's face, her expression a mixture of disappointment and concern. After a brief pause, he let out a resigned sigh. Sorry, father. The car fell into an uneasy silence, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavy in the air as they continued toward the hospital. After a while, they reached the hospital, and Momo was practically bouncing with excitement as they entered. Itachi stayed close by, watching his little sister with a soft smile as they approached the reception. The nurse called out, Yaoyorozu, please come in, and the family followed her into the doctor's cabin. The doctor, a middle-aged man with a gentle demeanor, greeted them with a warm smile. Hello, Momo, he said. Momo, still a bit shy, greeted him back. Hello, doctor. We'll need to take a blood sample to run a few tests, he explained. Momo winced slightly as the needle pricked her arm, but she remained as still as possible, her face determined. Strong girl, the doctor praised her, giving her a kind smile. He then left the room to run the tests. As the minutes ticked by, Momo's excitement only grew, though there was a hint of nervousness in her wide eyes. Itachi, sensing her unease, reached over and gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. Whatever happens, you'll be amazing, Momo, he said softly. She smiled up at him, her worries easing just a bit. After what felt like an eternity, the doctor returned. His smile remained as he looked at the family and said, Congratulations, Momo. You have a quirk called creation. Yana's eyes lit up as she leaned forward. Like mine? She asked. The doctor nodded. Exactly. Her quirk gives her the ability to create any non-living material or object from her exposed skin by transforming the molecular structure of her fat cells. But for her to create something, she needs to understand the molecular structure of the object she's making. Itachi, ever analytical, thought for a moment before speaking. So, she needs to eat more food to fuel her quirk. The doctor nodded again. Correct. The more material she has to work with, the more she'll be able to create. She needs to consume a significant amount of food for her quirk to be effective. It also takes more time and larger amounts of exposed skin to create bigger objects. And because her quirk burns fat cells, overuse without sufficient calorie intake can lead to weakness and even anemia. Yana, always the caring mother, nodded in understanding. We'll make sure she eats properly and stays healthy. Takashi, his pride barely contained, smiled broadly. That's great, he said, his voice full of satisfaction. Itachi, however, remained a bit more reserved. Sure, he said quietly, glancing at Momo, who was beaming with pride at her newfound abilities. He couldn't help but feel proud of her too, but a part of him also recognized the burden of having such a powerful quirk at such a young age. He only hoped she wouldn't feel the same weight of expectations that had once crushed him. As Momo excitedly asked the doctor more questions about her quirk, Itachi's thoughts drifted, a subtle sigh escaping him. His sister was strong, no doubt, but he hoped she would always remain the cheerful, hopeful girl she was today. On the other side of town, Erica strolled through the shops, her eyes scanning the displays as she searched for something special. She glanced around at the various stores but sighed in frustration, thinking, nothing here is what I'm looking for. As she continued walking, a small jewelry shop caught her eye. The storefront was simple, yet something about it drew her in. Maybe this is the place, she thought, opening her purse to check the money inside. Good thing they've been paying me well, she mused with a small smile. Walking inside, she was greeted by the shop owner, a kind older man with a warm smile. Welcome, ma'am. What are you looking for today? He asked politely. Erica hesitated for a moment before answering. I'm looking for jewelry. Something, for a boy. The man raised a brow, intrigued. What age are we talking about? He's turning 13, she replied with a soft smile, thinking of the surprise she had in mind. Ah, I see, the owner said, gesturing for her to follow. Please, come this way. As they walked through the shop, he showed her an array of items: rings, bracelets, lockets, each piece delicate and well crafted. Erica's eyes roamed over them until something in particular caught her attention. A locket, simple yet elegant, with a vibrant red stone set in the center. Her breath hitched slightly. This color, it's just like his eyes, she thought, an involuntary smile touching her lips. I'll take this one, she said softly, her gaze still fixed on the locket. The owner smiled, clearly pleased with her choice. A fine selection, ma'am. I'll wrap it up for you. As he moved to pack it, Erica interrupted gently, Excuse me, sir. Could you gift wrap it? Of course, he replied, nodding. He placed the locket carefully into a small box, wrapping it neatly with delicate paper and tying it off with a ribbon. The entire process was done with care, almost as if he understood how important this gift was to her. Your billing is just over there, he gestured, handing her the elegantly wrapped box. Erica nodded and made her way to the counter, paying for the gift. As she walked out of the shop, the small box tucked securely in her hands, she couldn't help but smile. It's perfect, she thought, her heart warm with the anticipation of giving it to him. I'm so glad I found something that suits him. She glanced down at the box again, her fingers brushing lightly over the ribbon. I hope he likes it. Erica walked briskly down the street, her thoughts still on the gift she had bought for Itachi. The soft clinking of the locket inside the box in her hand made her smile, imagining the look on his face when he opened it. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the pavement as she neared the mansion. But as she approached the quieter part of town, something caught her eye in the distance. Her smile faded when she saw a group of 4 thugs harassing an old woman. One of the thugs, tall and menacing, sneered, "You old hag, give us everything you have." Another thug chimed in with a cruel grin, "Yeah, if you want to live a little longer, you'd better hand it over." The remaining 2 thugs smirked, surrounding the terrified woman like predators circling their prey. She pleaded, her voice trembling, "Please. I don't have anything. I'm poor." Erica's heart raced, a chill running down her spine as she watched. Her hands tightened around the small gift box. What should I do? She thought, fear slowly creeping in. She wasn't strong like Itachi, and she had no quirk to defend herself. The third thug brandished a gun, aiming it at the old woman. Hurry up. I'll kill you right here, right now. Erica's breath caught in her throat. I can't just stand here. But fear held her legs in place, as if her body refused to move. Just then, one of the thugs noticed her. Well, look what we have here, the fourth thug whistled, eyeing her with a disgusting smirk. Hey, check her out. She's cute. The others turned to see Erica, and their sneers widened. The second thug, eyes gleaming, pointed toward her bag. Looks like you've got something we want. Hand it over. Before Erica could react, the old woman was shoved aside, and the thugs approached her with sinister grins. Come on, girl. Don't make this hard. If you don't, we've got other ways to get what we want, the second thug said, licking his lips. Disgust and fear gripped Erica, but she forced herself to reach into her purse and hand over some money. Here, please, just take it, she stammered, her voice barely audible. The thug snatched the money from her hands, counting it quickly. 1,000 yen? That's it? His tone was mocking, clearly unimpressed. Another thug, the third one with the gun, smirked darkly, guess we'll have to find another way to enjoy ourselves. Panic set in as Erica's body froze, her mind reeling. Her breathing grew shallow as memories of Itachi surfaced. She recalled a time when they were younger, back when she was quirkless and felt powerless. Itachi, only 4 years old at the time, had looked at her with that serious expression of his. Erica, he had said, his voice gentle yet strong, I know you've faced a lot of suffering because you're quirkless. But that doesn't mean you're weak. Young Erica had looked at him with wide eyes, unable to believe him. She had always felt so inferior. He had smiled, placing a hand on her shoulder. People who are quirkless can be strong too, if they believe in themselves. The memory filled her with a sudden surge of determination. Itachi's right. I'm not weak. Her eyes hardened, and in one swift motion, she shoved one of the thugs back and bolted. Hey. Get back here, one of them yelled, giving chase. Fear and adrenaline pumped through her veins as she sprinted down the street, her heart pounding in her ears. If you don't stop, I'll shoot, the third thug shouted, but she didn't dare look back. Just as she turned a corner, she felt a hand grab her, pinning her to a wall. The thug with the gun stood before her, his cold eyes glaring into hers as he aimed the weapon at her. Desperation took over as she fought back, pushing the gun away with both hands. The thug was physically stronger, but Erica's determination didn't waver. She kicked him hard in the gut, making him stumble back. In the moment of opportunity, she tried to run again, but another thug, one with a shape-shifting quirk, grabbed her leg, causing her to fall. Erica yelped in pain as the others closed in, their cruel laughs echoing around her. One of the thugs leaned in, preparing to strike, but Erica's hand brushed against a stone on the ground. Without thinking, she grabbed it and swung it at the thug's head. He staggered back, cursing. Breathing heavily, Erica scrambled to her feet, but before she could escape, the sound of a gunshot rang out. Suddenly, a figure appeared out of nowhere, Tsunagu Hakamata, better known as Fiber Hero, Best Jeanist. His voice boomed, stop right there. The thugs froze, panic flashing in their eyes. In a split second, they all turned to flee, but Best Jeanist's fibers shot out like lightning, binding 3 of the thugs tightly. One of them, however, with a blade quirk, managed to cut through the threads and escape, his blade-like arm gleaming as he disappeared into the shadows. As he approached the remaining thugs, his breath caught in his throat. Lying on the ground was a blonde girl, motionless. His eyes widened in shock, heart pounding in his chest. Back to Itachi. Itachi sat quietly in the car with his family, his gaze fixed on the scenery passing by. The recent quirk test with Momo still lingered in his mind. His face was tense, his jaw clenched ever so slightly, though he tried to remain composed. His mother, Yana, noticed the shift in his expression. Is something wrong, Itachi? She asked gently. He blinked, turning away from the window to face her. It's nothing, mother. He murmured, though his voice was far from convincing. I can't shake the feeling that something bad is going to happen. Concern shadowed Yana's eyes. Why do you feel that way? She asked softly, her hand resting on his arm. Itachi hesitated, swallowing the unease that had crept into his chest. I don't know. He said, his voice barely above a whisper. I just hope everything will be fine. But deep down, the feeling clung to him, like a shadow he couldn't escape. As he looked out the window again, the name echoed in his mind, Erika. Until next time.